You are listening to Peak One Sports.
Happy Saturday and welcome to the Leadoff on the Peak One Sports Network. I'm Ashton, that's Tony. We're here to get you ready for your sports weekend. What is going on, Tony?
Man, it's a great day to be a Mavs fan, isn't it?
Just a DFW sports fan in general. I know the Stars lost. We'll get to that. Rangers aren't doing so hot, but a lot going on. Every day, every night, there's something going on, at least for the next few days, and hopefully we keep this train rolling. Again, thank you for tuning in, however you're listening. Like I said, we'll talk Mavs T-Wolves Game 2. We'll get to the Stars. But first, say goodbye to unruly behavior and hello to a well-mannered pup. The Dapper Dog Academy stands out as a top-notch canine training institute located in Cleburne and serving the DFW Metroplex. Contact Korri and the Dapper Dog Academy on Facebook or call and schedule a consultation today. All the info is in the description box below. And don't bet with your gut. Check out Betalytics and get help making your picks using AI algorithms. Use promo code PEAK1 for 25% off when you sign up today. Go to Betalytics.com to start betting smarter. Again, thank you for listening, however you're listening, YouTube, podcast, whatever. The Mavericks, it did look good last night. I mean, they were down, what was it? I want to say 18 at one point in the second quarter. They make a little bit of a run, cut it to 12 at halftime, I believe. And then they just come out of the gate. I think they started went on an 8-0 run in the third quarter. End up, it being an all-time classic game, at least in my opinion. Mavs steal another one on the road. They're up 2-0 going back to Dallas.
I think that's the biggest part, is being 2 road wins, being up 2.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't sleep on the Timberwolves.
Yeah. They could easily
I just don't know if the
Timberwolves
are
game 1 or 2. Or game 1 or 2
are the team yet. I just don't know if the Timberwolves are that team.
Similar to Oklahoma City, right? They're young. Yeah. They have a lot of talent. They have a little more. Will be
good for years to come.
Yeah, they have a little more experience in the playoffs than Oklahoma City did. Have some of the skin on the walls, but I don't know. They just might not be ready yet.
When the playoffs started, we kind of made our predictions about what would be a failure this season. And I think for the most part, we both agreed that, at least get one round win, and that's good enough, right?
And compete in the second round.
The Mavs are, in my opinion, kind of in a situation like the Rangers were last year. We didn't expect them to be a contender, so now they're just kind of playing with house money. But the way you see it now, man, you're going to be disappointed if they don't pull this series out. I mean, how many? I don't have the stats. I don't know how many times teams have gone up 2-0.
It's in the 70 percentile. I mean, it's definitely going to be a disappointment if they don't win, especially if it's like a situation like in the 2006 finals. If Minnesota comes back and wins 4 straight. Now, game 1, it could be 2-0 the other way very easily. You're obviously more disappointed if you're a Minnesota fan because you had game 2, and for all intents and purposes, game 1 was just a coin toss. And this game pretty much was too. A couple of shots don't go your way. I thought Minnesota had it just because they'd won the free throw battle. Mavs missed a lot of free throws down the stretch. Kyrie missing 2. Both of his shots, it was like a minute and a half left. They were down 2. Luckily, Luka bum knee and all right now. 30-point triple-double, 32 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists. He's had 5 triple doubles in his last 6 games. Only players to do that: Magic, Wilt, and man, I'm forgetting the other one. Jokic. Magic, Wilt, and Jokic. Only players to have 5 triple doubles in 6 games in the playoffs. So Luka's just kind of making himself. I mean, I know the MVP race is a regular season deal, but if they extended it to the playoffs, is there any doubt Luka's the MVP? I mean, out of SGA, Jokic, and Luka's the only one still there, and he's still hurt. I mean, imagine if he was 100%. I don't know. Maybe he'd be complaining to the refs more. I don't know, but
that's a disadvantage to only include the regular season. And I know that every player doesn't make the playoffs, and I guess some teams that don't make the playoffs could have an MVP.
When's the last time an MVP has been from a non-playoff team, though?
Right. I think it's even more important to include that MVP, like the considerations into the playoffs, because you're really seeing when you get down the stretch, you really see who is the most valuable player on some teams. And I mean, no doubt, Luka is invaluable to this team.
Kyrie had 20 points. There were times when Luka was back in the locker room, and we haven't got the full extent of what he's dealing with. We probably won't until the playoffs are over, but he's, the last few games, even going back to Oklahoma City, middle of the game, he's going to run to the locker room for something, some issue that's involved with his knee. Kyrie's kept this team going while Luka's been off. I mean, that was a clutch 3-pointer by Luka to take the lead, but that was his first made field goal of the fourth quarter. Kyrie had 30 points in game 1, 20 points last night. He's obviously, I don't even know the right word I'm looking for, but he's keeping this team going, keeping them in it for Luka to have his magic. I mean, Luka scored like 15 points the fourth quarter in game 1, game winner last night. How valuable has Kyrie been, not only stat-wise, because really most of the playoffs he hasn't played like a superstar up until the last couple of games, but just his veteran leadership. He's been here so many times before.
Yeah, I think that's what he brings to this team, is that veteran leadership, and just be able to fill those shoes of Luka when he's not there. Because you really don't normally see them have both be really hot at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's usually one or the other, and then when each of them realize that, they're setting up the other player to stay hot. They're not trying to take it away from them. And that seems like, to me, from what I've seen of Kyrie in his career, different. Up to this point, coming to Dallas, it seemed like he was more of a selfish player, and he was going to take it. And I think he realizes what his role is here and where he's at. And again, you could almost make an argument for him being an MVP, because if you don't have him on this team, this Mavericks team's not still playing basketball.
And both Luka and Kyrie, when they're asked about each other, they're like, no, it's his team. It's his team. And to an extent, I think they're both right.
Yeah.
Where, 6 months ago, I might have sounded crazy, or you might have thought the Mavericks were screwed if this were true. But Kyrie's kind of their mental stability, believe it or not. You see him. I mean, Luka hasn't stopped complaining to the rest, but he seems like he can control it a little bit more in this series than in past. I mean, in the regular season, and really more than the Clippers series. And I mean, you see him when they were playing. It might have been the Clippers. I think it was against Oklahoma City, but they were fouling. They were down trying to catch back up with the Mavs, and they kept fouling Derek Lively because he was missing missing free throws, and they were calling like Kaka Lively or whatever, just foul him. And he was running away, and Kyrie brought him down and said, "Hey, don't run away from him. Just let them foul you. You go up, you hit your free throws." He hit his last 4 free throws, went 4 for 4. And Kyrie seems different. Like, he just seems like he's having fun. He loves being here. He just is getting that veteran presence, that veteran stability. Because Luka has the experience. There's other experience, which I mean, like Derek Lively's a rookie. He's getting experience now, and hopefully, he can, lots of good experience. Like he's out there competing, contributing, doing a lot, really from the bench because Gafford's usually getting the starts in these playoff games.
Yeah.
Just this Mavericks team looking forward. I mean, we need to enjoy the ride now.
Yeah.
Who knows how far this can go? This is at minimum going to go to Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals. But this team looks like they're set up. I mean, maybe not as good as Oklahoma City, maybe not as set up as Minnesota, but Luka has been the best player on the floor every series he's gone in.
Like we've talked about as well, it's the role players that have stepped up when they needed to. And the play of the bigs with Lively and Gafford.
Yeah.
I think that's something that you just didn't realize that this team had going into the playoffs. So it was hard to judge where this team was going to be, and these guys have really stepped that up.
Yeah, and you think Lively's only going to get better, more aggressive, more physical. Yeah. And it's good in his rookie year. And Luka being so young, I mean, Luka's still younger than SGA. It's hard to believe because he's been at an all-star caliber level of play his whole career, where y'all are getting more and more playoff experience. Kyrie is getting old, but I think you still have a few more good years from him, assuming, I mean, hey, from a locker room standpoint, it's all working now. We don't know how that's going to work. If this season ends without a championship, depending, does he feel upset about something? You never know. And I still think it's more likely than not that the Kyrie Maverick marriage will end poorly at some point. But it's just what's going to set it off. What's going to, how long is it going to last? Hopefully you get a championship or two out of it, but just enjoying the ride now because everything seems to be going well. And again,
we can keep this team together and keep Kyrie and
Gafford,
Luka,
Washington, Luka,
and all these role players
not going anywhere.
This is going to be a good team for a few years. You hope that it doesn't go south like other places that Kyrie has been. Yeah. But Kyrie also seems like a different guy now than he was then.
Yeah, he seems. I saw a video. They were kind of comparing different situations to similar situations from the Cavaliers and LeBron to the Mavs and Luka, and they interact so much differently than Kyrie and LeBron did. And I think maturity is a lot of that. Where I think LeBron and Kyrie just kind of butted heads so much. They thought they were the star. LeBron was the star, left, and Kyrie, took over was drafted by the Cavaliers and took them over a bad Cavs team until LeBron got back. And then all of a sudden he's not the star anymore. I think that's similar situation where Luka's already the star here. He's the foundation of this roster. And I think Kyrie recognizes that. He's more mature, and then Luka's so receptive to him where he's like, nah, he's the leader of the team, where I think in all intents and purposes, Kyrie is the leader of this team. He's the guy. On the play side, it's more Luka, and then when Luka's hurt or out or whatever, Kyrie kind of steps into that role, and they kind of joke, and it's like Batman and Robin, and they're both saying, nah, he's Batman, and then Luka goes, he's Batman, I can be Superman or whatever.
Yeah.
Where I don't think you've seen that in a lot of multi-superstar situations. You definitely haven't seen that when it's Kevin Durant, Harden, Kyrie in the past. Chris Paul, where they all get on a team and then it looks good on paper. It works for a couple of years, but you don't get a championship out of it, and it looks like it ends pretty poorly. Where I think this, for some reason, one way, I can't tell you the exact reason. I can give you a few ideas, but this has worked so well, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and maybe it's because you're not just bombarding your team with 3 superstars and then you don't have any role players. To your credit, that the role players play such a big role in this team, because even even last season when they got Kyrie, Luke and Kyrie were playing really well together. They both scoring a lot of points, putting up the stats, and they just weren't winning games.
Yeah.
Game 3 in Dallas tomorrow night. We'll see if the Mavs can. Don't get too cocky. The Mavs have 2 really close wins. Like I said, it could flip the other way, but they've played great. Hopefully, they get a little bit of bump being back in Dallas. But as we've seen with the Clippers and Oklahoma City, when you play a desperate team, hopefully the Mavs. Hopefully, you have Jason Kidd, Kyrie saying, "Guys, just chill. We haven't done shit yet." You know.
Yeah. No. You're right. They could come back here at home and shit the bed. They need to come back, pedal to the floor, and just finish this series off early. Give all these, every one of this team could use some rest. Give them some rest, and because you're probably looking at the Celtics sweeping that series the way that one's been going.
Celtics are running away with it right now. Indiana should have won game 1. I think it was the first time, maybe ever. But at least in the playoffs where Indiana was up by 3 with 10 seconds to go and had the ball inbounding it and end up losing the game.
Yeah.
It went into overtime. Celtics won. Then Celtics, I didn't watch the game 2. The score looked like it was probably pretty close most of the game. But I think Indiana missed their opportunity. I don't think you can win 4 of the next 5. Is what essentially you have to do, win 4 or 5 against Boston.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Mavs can, win in 4 or 5 games. I know that's still a tall ask, even being up 2-0. Then you get a little bit of extra rest because I don't think the Celtics series is going past game 5. And Reckless and I do have a bet going because he said Mavs in 5. I said there's no way. I said Mavs will probably win in 7. So if Mavericks do win in 5 games or less, I will buy him and send him a Mavericks jersey, which I will be happy to do if they somehow win in 4 or 5 games, which looks very possible. The Dallas Stars down 0-1, losing to Edmonton 3-2 in double overtime. Now have played back-to-back double overtime playoff games, going back to game 6 of the second round. I couldn't find stats on that. Google couldn't figure out what I was trying to ask, but I don't know if that's ever happened before in the playoffs. Back-to-back double overtime games that you've had to play. Definitely not in the same series, but luckily Stars won. Stars won early in 6 games, and Edmonton, Vancouver went 7. So you did get quite a bit of rest. So it wasn't that hard on the body, I don't think, playing 2 back-to-back double overtime games. Silver lining is Stars played pretty bad, but they still take it to a double overtime. I still think the Stars are in the driver's seat. They've lost game 1 in every series so far. So they've won the other 2 series. We'll have to see. They do need to get back on track tonight, winning a game 2. Connor McDavid with, say, controversial, just kind of shots fired type comments. I don't really understand it, but he said the Stars are just one of those teams that choke in the playoffs. They're like the Dallas Cowboys of hockey. I've never thought that. I've never thought they've been. I mean, they're on a pretty good run now of getting to the playoffs. I think 4 of the last 5 years. I compare the Toronto Maple Leafs more to the Dallas Cowboys of hockey because they haven't won since the 90s, and they've been to the playoffs quite a bit. They've been in that situation. But thoughts on McDavid's comments about the Stars being playoff chokers, because Edmonton hasn't won anything in a long time either. Because if you don't win the championship in any given sport, that means you're losing in the playoffs. So,
is there any team though that you can just say, oh, they should go through and run through this? I mean, you're playing professional sports, and especially in hockey, I think it's even tougher when you're, the playoffs are tougher. most of the time one goal, scoring one goal could mean winning or losing. So that's
Yeah,
where this is a tough game. And just to say, oh, you should go in and you should just be good. Like, yeah, and they've been winning series.
if Edmonton, I mean, Connor McDavid hasn't won. I mean, I'm not a hockey expert, unless he was won somewhere else. I know he hadn't won with Edmonton. Um, to me, choking is being favored by a lot, not it being a close. Like, I mean, you should go in and win, which we know in hockey, 8 seeds beat 1 seeds all the time. You almost saw it with Vegas, in Dallas. But to choke, you either have to be really hyped up, big favorites and lose, or just be up like 2-0, 3-1 and end up losing the series, which
you're in the
hasn't happened for
conference.
the Stars.
You're in the conference finals.
For the second straight year, the third
So
time in the last 5 years, you just were in the Stanley Cup final
I
in
don't
the
think you can
bubble.
say, I don't think you can educatedly say that you choke when you make it to the conference finals, even if you continue year after year after year making it to the conference finals.
Reckless will have to when he's watching this, he needs to comment and let me know, because maybe Connor McDavid's just one of those guys. I don't watch enough of his hockey. This may be the first time it's obviously the first time the Stars have been in a series against him, but I can't say that I've ever sat down and watched any of his games, or really know him, because I know he's one of the stars of the league. That maybe he just riles it up. I didn't watch Vancouver Edmonton. I don't know if he said similar things, which is fine. I think it's fun. It makes for a fun series, because Edmonton and Dallas aren't really rivals or anything. But it kind of puts that extra emphasis on the series.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just one of those guys, because I mean, the Stars have been in the play, like I said, for the last 5 years. Made it to the conference finals 3 of those years. Stanley Cup 1, I think, lost in Game 7 of the first round the other time. But haven't been favored by a whole lot in any of the ones they've lost. They hadn't been up 3-1 or 2-0 in any of the series and ended up losing. So I don't know. Maybe I just don't follow enough hockey that's the choke artist in me, or in the Stars. I mean, they just beat the last 2 Stanley Cup champions. Last year, losing to the eventual Stanley Cup champion in the Western Conference Finals. But either way, I guess we'll see. I guess we have hopefully we have a good series on our hands. I mean, that's fun things to talk about. Get a little bit of rivalry action going if the Stars can keep it close. I mean, look at these Western Conference Finals so far. The Mavs have won 2 really close games. The Stars win or lose in double overtime. Hopefully they can tie it up 1-1. You just have a lot of intense games going on. Even back in the second round. Now, thinking back, maybe I guess he could mean the fact that the Stars were up 3-0 against Colorado in Game 1 and lost. And then they almost lost in Game 2, being up 4-0. But they just lost 1 game out of all that. They did give up a lot of goals and let them get back in the game.
Yeah.
But either way, second round for Mavs and Stars have both been really intense games. As much as I want this to continue, I don't know how much my heart can take. Back every single day having an intense, close game. But we'll see. I mean, why can't the Stars just go in and win 3-0? Mavs win by 20 points.
I mean,
that doesn't happen this late in the playoffs, though.
It's nice, though, to be a DFW sports fan, and all of your 4 major sports teams are all playoff teams.
They're relevant. Yeah, I know. I want to say it was 2015 or 2016. We were talking about it was the first time in 20-something years that no DFW team made the playoffs that year. Now we have Rangers defending World Series champions. Stars and Mavs in the Western Conference Finals. Stars in the Western Conference Finals last year. Mavs in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago.
Yeah.
With arguably the best player in the NBA. Best player right now injured. And then, the Cowboys. But, I mean, the Cowboys have made the playoffs 3 straight years, 3 straight 12-5 seasons. I think something similar this year, because they have a really good roster.
10 years ago when we were 8-8 every season, would you not have said, hey, I'll take a 12-win season over this
Yeah,
8-8, even if we don't win the Super Bowl.
This has 2010, 2011 vibes. It was about a year and a half where the Rangers make 2 World Series. The Mavericks win the championship. I don't think the Stars were that good back then, but you did have the Cowboys were relevant. The Super Bowl was in Dallas. You had the All-Star game in NBA All-Star game in Dallas. Had a lot of fun stuff happening. You have some similar stuff here. You have the MLB All-Star game here coming up in a couple of months. But yeah, every team, the first time the Stars and Mavs are in the Western Conference Finals at the same time.
Yeah.
It looks like the Mavs have a really good chance to make the NBA Finals. And I still think the Stars, I don't know what Vegas throws it at, but I still think the Stars are more than likely going to make the Stanley Cup Final because they're the overall better team. They played, in my opinion, they played poorly and still took it to a double overtime. So we'll see what happens. I think both series are going to be pretty intense and go deep anyways. I still think this Mavs T-Wolf series, I still think it goes 6 games. Hopefully the Mavs don't let their foot off the accelerator and they at least keep a lead. They don't make it like 2-2 or anything like that.
Yeah, I think they have to at least pull out 1 win at home.
Yeah.
Bare minimum.
Yeah, and I think you're good. Like with a 2-0 lead, as long as you don't let it get tied, I think the pressure's still on Minnesota. Although, again, the desperate team mentality, you have to take that into account. All right. Last week we talked about EA College Football 25 and the new trailer getting released. I think it's convinced me to pay a little bit extra, pre-order the deluxe edition so I can play a few days early. We'll see how that turns out because we have a lot of we're going to do a lot of content here on Peak One Sports Network with that game. But some kind of surprising college football news out of nowhere a couple of days ago. The NCAA and the Power 5 conferences have agreed to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in 105-year history of the NCAA. The NCAA will pay over $2.7 billion over the next 10 years to over 14,000 current and past players. This will also settle some pending antitrust claims as well. A revenue sharing plan for each school, allowing them to share each school to share up to $20 million with its athletes per year. Student athletes back as far as 2016 are eligible to receive a share of as part of the settlement. In return, the students cannot sue the NCAA. So that's what a lot of this is about. But
that's what that's about.
But 20 million outside of boosters, outside of like this car dealership wanting to sponsor or Chick-fil-A wanting outside of all that, the school can directly pay the Power 5 conferences, which I'm going to ask you something about that in a second.
Well, which
$20 million per school per year, which sounds like a lot, but when you have, was it like 60, 70 players on, I mean, even more on your roster.
Oh, yeah, 100 players on your football
roster. You'll probably pay your star quarterback or star player $1 million, something like that. But this is pretty significant where I think this helps out the smaller schools, assuming they can afford this. Which the NCAA is going to pay a big chunk of it, where it's not like, hey, if you go to Texas A&M instead of SMU, we can get you a lot more money, sponsorships. Not that A&M can't pay you the same amount from this, but I think a team like SMU or Baylor or smaller school, you can get a really big star player and give them a bigger chunk of that 20 million, as opposed to Texas A&M, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, who have lots of star players. Or that 20 million is going to get eaten up pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how they divide this up. I mean, being a settlement, or is it divided up more evenly?
Well, they said over $2.7 billion for the next 10 years. I was going to, you do pretty mad, about $270 million a year. You divide it by 20 Power 5 conferences. So NCAA is going to pay most of this. So you can't, it's not going to be like the Texas Longhorns have more money to spend than SMU or whatever. Once this money runs out, I don't know if the schools can continue to pay them directly. I think NCAA is just giving them money. And then you got to think past players as well, back to 2016. So $20 million isn't just for the current roster. But the Power 5 schools, because Pac-10, I mean, do we still consider that a Power 5?
Well,
anymore?
maybe in this settlement, in terms of the settlement,
They're going back to
now. It's
10.
essentially a Power 4 conference.
Yeah.
You know,
Because I think the Pac-12 is going to still exist. They're just going to bring some other schools, I believe. I don't know if they're going to close up. I don't know officially if they're done or not.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I know I've heard the term used Power 4 conference.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even if they stay around and they go and get Hawaii and Fresno State and whatever, they're not going to be a Power 5 conference. I know technically they still exist because we're still in college baseball. It still exists. I just don't know if they're completely shutting down or not. But no, that was a good point. We're talking about past players as well, so the Pac-12 gets thrust into this. Going back to any teams in 2016. So moving forward, it's probably not. We're talking about Power 4 schools: SEC, ACC, Big 12, and Big 10.
Yeah.
But this is something where I think because the NCAA is footing the bill, not that it gives a benefit to smaller schools. I can see where there's a benefit, but I don't think. I mean, everyone kind of has an even piece of the pie right now.
Which is why I think teams will probably divide that a little more evenly than I'm going to give my quarterback $1 million.
If he's a big enough star, he's probably already making. I mean, look at Arch Manning making $3 million being a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I saw Dion was on a podcast and he was talking about this and he was saying, okay, name the players that are really changing the game, that are really big NILs that you know of, right? Mm-hmm. And these podcasters started naming off a few, Travis Hunter, Caitlin Clark, Shador may have been on that. I don't remember who, but it's like less than 10 people that you really know, like household names.
Yeah.
That are in college making of all sports. There's like less than 10 that are really making impactful NIL deals.
Yeah.
So you're really talking about, it's not the NIL, like the name, image, likeness thing. It's how can we find a way that these schools now boosters can pour into these star players in the country.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on where there's still, call it cheating, call it whatever you want, bending the rules a little bit, where boosters are throwing more and more money into this, where I guess it's easier to hide. Like if it gets investigated, they're like, well, I paid him this to use his name, image likeness. There's people, I'll just use the car dealership again, just because lack of a better idea, but this car dealership booster who, has a ton of money, just gives money to somebody. And if it ever comes back, oh yeah, he came and did an event for me, or he promotes, a lot of these guys are getting paid for not doing anything, I'm sure, but now they can just throw it out there. And if the NCAA investigates it, they can say, well, they did this, they did that. There's a lot more. I mean, in the past it was, if you give them any money of any sort, it's against the rules. It doesn't matter what, like if you buy a lunch for a recruit, it's against the rules.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, it just has to be name, image, likeness. I know there's a little bit more that goes into it, but you can fudge the rules a little bit. And you say impactful NIL money to, I guess, our perspective, where we're talking about Arch Manning making a lot, Caitlin Clark making a lot, Shador Sanders probably making a lot. But significant to a kid who is choosing to go to college. Like maybe he's not a huge superstar, but he's choosing to go to college over having to get a job to support his family or whatever. And he's going to make $50,000, $60,000 this year in NIL money, which doesn't seem like a lot to us. We're like, that's not even significant. He's not a big name. He's making a little bit of money, but that's significant to them.
Yeah.
That's why I think people want to throw negativity at this a lot, and I get there's fudging of the rules. There's a lot of negative stuff happening, a lot of stuff that benefits bigger programs more than the little programs. I understand that, but I think you're getting players that, because there was already some of this going on in the past, where use Eric Dickerson as a good example, where he probably would have ended up playing at A&M, but SMU throws more money at him, and I think A&M could throw more money at him.
They just weren't willing to bend.
They weren't because it was like they were bending the rules a little, or well, they were both teams were flat out cheating. Everybody was doing it, but they're like, okay, there's a level to what we can do.
Yeah.
As of now, you can have a player who, whether his father went there, whatever, if Sam Houston State is his college of choice, or they want to stay close to home, but they're like, well, I have to go here because Texas is going to pay me some money under the table, you know, where they're like, no, UTSA, come play at UTSA, stay in San Antonio. We can get you a deal going. You can make $30,000-$40,000 this year as an 18-year-old. You know, you're good at, because you're a superstar on this team. Maybe you're just a star at Texas and competing for a backup spot or a secondary role. Here you're a star and you can make money. I think that's the benefit. Yeah, there's a lot that Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, other coaches and analysts want to talk about how it's ruining the sport, and they're going to throw out Arch Manning making multi-million-dollar money as a backup. They're going to throw, which who cares? Go make your money. But they're going to throw other things out there where Ohio State's going to get more money because of this. It's hurting recruiting. I agree, it's changing recruiting to a lot. There's going to be a lot of negatives anyways. I think when you think of it as what's the word I'm looking for? The term I'm looking for, well-being. And when you have players that they can't go get a second job, they can't go, like if they're not on full scholarship, then they're still having to pay for food and stuff. Like I know athletic programs give them some meal vouchers where their parents aren't paying for their stuff. That's a real thing. And because we want to nickel and dime that, we can't just say, just let them go out and get their own money. If they want to, if a college video game wants to, what is it, $10,000 to use their name, image, and likeness, or their name?
Yeah,
it's not nothing ridiculous, but hey, if I'm because I know they were going to have like some famous podcasts on the game. If I know it never happened, but if EA came to me and said, hey, we'll pay you $10,000 and you come record some stuff, you'll be one of the podcasts on there. I'm taking that all day long. I'm not going to say, well, let me talk to my guy. Let's negotiate. Like I'm going to take that money. Yeah. I'm going to say, hey, I was on a video game. Yeah. And that's what a lot of players like. They're allowing them to go do little things like this. And yes, it's ridiculous sometimes. We're going to see a $10 million a year college athlete in the next 5 years. I fully believe, where it's just straight up he's making that much money. I know.
I think you've already got guys, your Shedeur Sanders. I'm not sure. Maybe Bronny James, Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark's was making more money in college and off her NIL than she is in the WNBA.
And I think
that could be
that's
true.
Going to be
Shedeur.
That's going to be a lot.
Never turn out to be an NFL player, but he's absolutely making more money than he
that's going to be.
That's
going to be the case. And to me, I think you're going to have like Quinn Ewers could have went to the NFL. Now you can make an argument, is he ready, this or that, but whatever. But yeah, exactly, where he's going to stay at like Texas may have mixed feelings because you have Arch Manning sitting there anyways. I think they would have been fine. But you're having situations like that where you have star caliber quarterbacks who Quinn Ewers probably would have went late first round, second round. I have heard like third round projections, but they said they could see him going up into late in the first round. But because of NIL deals, you have players staying in college longer because of that. Now, I think Quinn Ewers is probably the biggest star, best. That's the best you're going to get. That's going to stay for that reason. Because unless you're going to be taken in the top 10, you're probably not going to make as much money as you are in college. Now, Shedeur Sanders, because of his name, because of Dion, he's going to make more because he's not quite up to the level. He's not Heisman candidate. I'm sure he'll play in the NFL one way or the other. But you're going to have really good players who are kind of on the cusp. Like, yeah, they might be 4th, 5th round projections in the NFL where they say, I'll just stay here. I'll start. I'll make money, probably more money than I will as a 5th round pick. And I think that helps the sport more than anything because it keeps more talent in college football.
I think college football is very close to surpassing the NFL in popularity. And I think it's going to help with these NIL deals, like you're saying, to your point, that you're going to keep players here longer because they're making more money here than they will going to the NFL. Yeah. You're going to end up with a really good, you're going to end up with players that are sticking around for full years and really making a name for themselves because they're making more money in college than they will signing an NFL rookie contract. I could very well see college football surpassing the NFL in popularity because of that alone.
Yeah, there are levels to it where maybe it makes Ohio State have a dynasty longer because they keep their players. I don't know. I think it'll probably, like, that aspect of it probably helps smaller schools a little bit more, because I think you see with Justin Fields, you see with Alabama quarterbacks, you see with the Texas quarterbacks, they struggle in the NFL because I think they're thrusted into looking better than they are because they have the talent around them, where they're still making good throws, but they have the best receiver in the country catching. They have the best offensive line in the country, or top 5 offensive line. They have great teams around
you're not
them.
Dealing with salary caps.
Well, yeah, but Justin Fields, I think, looked a lot better than he is because he goes to the college football playoff. He plays in a national championship as one of the best looking quarterbacks. Well, not that he's not talented, not a great quarterback. I think you have levels of guys who play at Baylor, North Carolina, Stanford, schools like that, where I'll just stay in school because I'm not projected to be a top 10 pick or first round pick. As this Ohio State quarterback, this Texas quarterback is going to go first, top 5 because they're had a lot of success on the big stage, and they have, honestly, I don't think Caleb Williams is as good of I don't know that he's going to be a bust. I think he might be a bust. But he played it. I think the difference between playing at USC thrusts him up a little bit higher. And he played at Oklahoma. He played these big time programs with a lot of talent. I'm not saying that's always the case, but sometimes there can be blinders put on a lot of fans and scouts to some extent. Whereas when you play at those smaller schools, you don't get the same notoriety. You can still go make NIL money, but I don't think you're going to come out of Universal Central Florida, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but they're like, he is playing different. He's playing the AAC. Well, I guess they're the Big 12 now, but he's playing lesser opponents than the Alabama quarterback, than Ohio State quarterback. So he's projected as second round, third round pick now instead of a top 15 pick. Whereas I think the NIL money, keeping kids in school longer, I think has more of a benefit for these smaller schools to keep talent around. And I think level the playing field, because the reason the NFL is more popular right now is because you have more teams winning Super Bowls. Like, you had the Patriots for so long that people get tired of. The Chiefs have won a few Super Bowls, but the Chiefs weren't the best team this year. The Patriots the last few years weren't the best teams in the regular season. Like, when you have Alabama make it to the college football playoff every year, the national championship, it's Georgia, Alabama. It was Georgia and Clemson. Yeah. It's like and now with the expanded playoffs in college football, I think I don't know if that changes much until you even the playing field a little bit more. And I think NIL has the opportunity to do that. I can see it, padding Georgia's roster and padding Alabama's roster to an extent. But I think occasionally you'll have those smaller schools be thrust up, where we had a little bit of it. I mean, you had Coastal Carolina go out there, but Coastal Carolina wasn't really going to do anything. You had UTSA for a couple of years. I think you'll have teams like that get thrust up for a 2 or 3 year period every few years.
Yeah.
But that actually can compete because they found a player that, like, you know what? I don't have to go compete for a starting job at Texas A&M. I'm going to go play at UTSA. I can still make a little bit of money there and start. I have a different opinion on NIL. I think it'll help. It has the opportunity to help smaller schools a little bit more and even the playing field.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see how. We'll see if Alabama or pick your Power 5 school, they just win the next 5 national championships.
Also, keep this in mind on our perspective is, if it's not for NIL deals and money, we don't have college football back on the NCAA 2025.
Absolutely. I mean, and not only that, I mean, you have names which are cool, but it's, I guess if you didn't grow up in the early 2000s of playing with QB number 3 on the back of a jersey, it's different. It's definitely cool playing with the actual names of these guys.
Well, and I think,
but I agree. I don't think we have the game. If it
was a lot easier then to build these players because the details of the game weren't so as good. Now the details of the game are so good. Could you imagine having a game full of nobodies? And you can't even use the likeness of these players. You can't build Quinn Ewers. On Texas, even if you don't use his name, you just can't really build him the same, and then there's issues with that. So I don't think they even bring the game out if you don't have that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a good point. That's something, like, if you're a video game fan or college football video game fan, and I think that's why the popularity is going to grow some more, because you're almost a generation removed from that video game. I mean, your son has never played this game, and I don't know how excited he is. I don't know how big of a college football fan he is, but I imagine he's going to get just as excited as you are when y'all get that game and y'all play. And the same with my son, where people have kind of been on Madden the last 4 or 5 years for just being generic, and I'm hoping this game is so good that it kind of EA takes a step back and say, hey, we need to work on Madden. Because I can see people saying, screw it. I'll still buy Madden because I like, using the players and transferring them to Madden and using them in NFL. I know you can just create them. And
isn't that one of the packages you can buy? You get both Madden and NCAA for this year. I think I saw it was like $162.
Yeah, you get to buy the deluxe edition for both, and you get 3 days early access to both.
Yeah,
I think I'm just going to get the deluxe edition of college football. Then I'm just going to buy Madden when it normally comes out, because I haven't bought it in a couple of years. That's usually what I do. I skip every other year because it's basically the same game. But I like to be able to do that. Like, if I just have a really special player, just somebody who I had for a few years, did a lot of stuff in a dynasty or a program in college football, or I'll send him to the NFL and I can actually draft him on Madden.
Yeah.
Which I think is a pretty cool aspect. But yeah, I don't need the deluxe edition. I mean, the only reason I'm getting it is for the early access. I don't do the dynasty online teams or whatever player packages. I usually just do franchise mode and dynasty mode in those games. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Give us your thoughts on Mavs, Stars, this college football news. Be sure to subscribe and like or follow however you are listening. And until next time, that's Tony. I'm Ashton. We'll see you guys later.
Have a good weekend.